Show, and we are live here. So we are going with Adam, Ship My Money Share, and your old pal Emac here on the Osmo DFS Strategy Show. Technical difficulties, of course, because Adam and I are involved. We are hoping his audio is going to be enough for us to work. So I'm going to talk a little quieter. He's going to talk a little bit louder, and we will get into this slate. Fortunately, it is just a four-gamer. I'm going to hit on some injuries, news, and notes. There is a 6 o'clock game between the Spurs and the New Orleans Pelicans. We know that DeMar DeRozan is out, Davis Bertans is out, and Anthony Davis is out. We have questionable Julius Randle and LaMarcus Aldridge. So if you're going to play that game, you'll have all of the news. It's mostly the single game slates. FanDuel is offering an all-day slate with small prize pools that included. Otherwise, we're going to focus on the four games that are at 8 o'clock. News that we are looking at for there. We know that Joel Embiid is out for rest. If you listened to the Early Bird podcast with Adam and I, then you know that I was foolishly drafting him in my drafts because I thought that it was the 26th, and I read the note and it was the 25th. But the real day was the 25th. So I lit some money on fire there. That was fun. But we know that Embiid is out. Wilson Chandler's out with a hamstring strain. Nikola Jokic will be back. He had served his one-game suspension. Jimmy Butler is seeing a specialist today. He is with the team. I don't think he's going to play. He's doubtful with a wrist injury. So that covers that game with the exception of Jamal Murray, who left the arena last night in a walking boot. He hurt his ankle, but has said he plans on playing. Your mileage may vary there, so we'll need to be prepared for that. Nick Stauskas, sore knee, unlikely to play. And then Kevin Huerter, whatever. Kevin is back. Sore neck. Adam, I'm going to let you do a little talking here. You had a phenomenal night over there on the DraftKings. You cleared well into five figures. Well into five figures in the $4.20 max, in the $8, the crazy eights, and the $10 contest there. How did that feel? Because when we recorded the podcast, you were lamenting all of the Karl Anthony Towns that you had last night.
Yeah, last night was pretty weird. I gave up on the slate once Cat had 6 points at halftime, and then I happened to find like one lineup that had a chance to maybe like make my money back. And then Cat came out of nowhere, and he actually pissed me off because he was just passing like my one good team, but I didn't think it was gonna be enough for me. But yeah, that ended up getting there in the fourth quarter. It was a pretty good time.
All right. Now, again, chat, I'm going to work to talk a little bit softer so you can turn your volume up just a touch. We apologize for the technical difficulties here. I'll be getting a different platform, but I don't have the password for that. And a few people are getting well-deserved rest. So if Adam's phone craps out or anything, not to fear. I will roll this as a solo show. Again, we have the four-game slate. And then you do get Fast Eddie Fear tonight at 7 o'clock. For that 8 o'clock lock. So from that standpoint, we got you covered. Adam's going to be writing the deep dive because you don't need to hear him or see his pretty face for that. So in the meantime, you get to stare at me and have some fun. A reminder, if you have not yet signed up for any Osmo product, if you utilize the promo code DFS Strategy, all one word, when you select any 1 month package, you will receive 50% off. If you include the Fantasy Cruncher add-on, that will be included in that 50% off. Hey, look, I'm wearing a Fantasy Cruncher t-shirt. Shout out to those I got to hang out with at the FSTA in Tampa Bay this week, Dave and Allie. Good times. All right, chat. I know you can't see Adam, but that's okay. You get to see me, your old pal. Let's talk about the first game that we have here, Adam. We have the Pacers and Memphis. Now, we know that the Pacers are without for the remainder of the season Victor Oladipo, so that is going to put Tyreke Evans in a more prominent role. He has been priced up on DraftKings. I believe he's familiar with this Memphis team. On the Memphis side, we have a back-to-back here, and that could mean a day of rest or taking it easy for either Mike Conley or Marc Gasol. I suspect they're going to play. They want to get these guys on the trade block, so I think they need to show teams that they can go on back-to-backs at full strength. This is a tasty matchup on both sides, even though it's one of our slower and lower projected point games. It's checking in at a 203 over under, but we know where things ought to be consolidated with regards to the production, Adam. Let's talk about that Pacers backcourt for starters.
Yeah, so I mean, we saw this happen earlier in the season when Oladipo was injured, that Tyreke Evans moves into the starting lineup. He is really tough to figure out what to do with from a DFS standpoint because we have a pretty long track record of Tyreke Evans being a productive DFS player and being someone that when he gets the minutes is really, really good. But it hasn't really been the case this year when he joins the starting lineup. One, the primary reason for that is that he's not getting to the basket as frequently as in the past. He's shooting more 3-pointers. He's not a good 3-point shooter, but he's shooting them, and he's driving to the rim less. If you look at his drives per game since the start of January, he's actually averaging fewer drives per 36 minutes than he was earlier in the season, and he's still shooting a bunch of threes. So I don't really have any confidence in this playing out better than it did earlier this year when he was really, really disappointing in this role. That being said, I mean, he should play around 28 minutes here. He, alongside Darren Collison this season, without Oladipo on the floor, he has a 24% usage rate. He's averaged 0.85 fantasy points per minute. So on a 4-game slate, it's not the end of the world, but it's certainly someone that I want to pay close attention to his ownership because there are enough legitimate concerns about him in this role and just his overall play this season that if he's going to be very popular in an unappealing matchup against Memphis, I am more than happy to look elsewhere in my lineups. If he's not going to be popular, then sure, whatever, take a chance on him. But from the Indiana guys, I would rather just find the extra, $400 for Darren Collison, who has averaged 0.95 fantasy points per minute without Oladipo on the floor. You can look to Bogdanovic, who has averaged 0.95 fantasy points per minute alongside Collison without Oladipo. And then you have Miles Turner, obviously at a different position and a little bit more expensive price point, who's averaged nearly 1.2 fantasy points per minute alongside Collison without Oladipo. So if Evans is going to get ownership, I would rather look to any of those other guys.
And that makes absolutely fair sense. He's not shooting well this season. He's a career 44% shooter. He is shooting from the field 39%. From deep, he's shooting 36%. Now, that's better than his career average, but he was horrible as a 3-point shooter early on in his career. Last year, he did play with Memphis. That has nothing to do with tonight's game, but I do want to point out that the 19 points he was averaging per game, he's played 52 games, started 32 of those. He had a much different role in a much different offense. And it's just, we've seen enough of sample, as Adam mentioned here, with Oladipo out previously when he missed those 8 games earlier this year. I'm okay going away from Tyreke Evans, particularly on DraftKings where they have priced him up. Now, if we look to the other part of the backcourt there for the Pacers, we do have Corey Joseph, who is in the mix. We've got Aaron Holiday at 3,300. Joseph is at 4,100 on DraftKings. Those guys, hey, maybe they'll get us 20 fantasy points. We only have 8 teams in our player pool on this 4-game slate. But the one guy I feel somewhat confident in for this matchup is going to be, for me, it's Bojan Bogdanovic. And it's still mediocre, but he can be a roster filler. You're going to get close to 25 fantasy points with him. It feels a little more solid, but my flyer definitely will be Aaron Holiday here, the youngest of the 3 Holiday brothers. Ooh, he's going against his oldest brother over there on Memphis. Now that's a narrative I can get behind, Adam. Anything else from the Pacers backcourt?
The people couldn't see me shaking my head as you said that, but I was shaking my head just so everyone knows. About the narrative, not about Aaron Holiday. I do think he's a perfectly fine value option. We saw him actually, play pretty well in this role earlier in the year, and Evans really wasn't playing more than 28 to 30 minutes in those games, so it does open the door for you to get 20-ish minutes from Aaron Holiday with Corey Joseph playing more time at the 2. And I agree with you on Bogdanovic. Especially where you do have to roster the 2 small forwards on FanDuel. It's an unappealing matchup, but at 5,400 on, I believe, both sites, he's certainly in play because he does see a sizable usage bump without Oladipo on the floor. We know he's going to play big minutes. So, I like Bogdanovic more than Evans if Evans is going to be higher owned.
All right, and then when we look to the front court here, focusing on Sabonis and Miles Turner, Turner has been pretty good over his since returning from injury, over his last 5 games since coming back, he has 3 with above 30 minutes. He has the other 2 are above 25. The guy on the short end of the stick there is Domantas Sabonis, who has not topped 27 minutes in those games, and he has been under 23 minutes in 4 of them. So I think I'm moving away from Sabonis. I'm okay if I get Turner. And the intriguing guy is Thaddeus Young. You know, he is my lodestone, the guy that just crushes my soul, rips my heart out, shows it to me while it's still beating. But he had 56 fantasy points in his last outing. That was on the strength of 2 blocks, 2 steals, but he dropped 23 NBA points, 15 rebounds. Now that's a season high for him on rebounds this year. But he's in play on DraftKings again with this 8-team player pool. Would you like to finish up the Pacers frontcourt for us, Adam?
I really like Turner. We've seen the minutes. He played 37 and a half minutes in his last game against Toronto. I'm obviously not projecting him there, but we had seen him, playing around 32 minutes pretty consistently. So giving him more than 30 minutes is something I'm pretty comfortable with here. He's averaged, like I said, nearly 1.2 fantasy points per minute alongside Darren Collison, but without Oladipo this year. The reason I use alongside Collison is just to try and get more of the starter minutes, not, conflating it with minutes where Turner was out there without any starters or against backups and stuff like that. But he's been very, very productive in that role. He's been playing really well lately, regardless of Oladipo. So I really like him. Obviously, it's a tough matchup, but the fact that Gasol is on the second half of a back-to-back certainly should not hurt Miles Turner's production. And I think that the price tag is still very reasonable on him. As far as Thaddeus Young goes, I mean, he should play 33, 34 minutes. He's been playing really well lately. The only issue I have with him is that the price tag has come up as a result of that production. And this is a guy that's been in the league for a while on a bunch of different teams. I'm not willing to just throw years and years of that young production out the window for what he's done over the last month or so. So I'm still treating him like a good but not great player who is going to average somewhere around 0.85 to 0.9 fantasy points per minute. And when the price tag starts to get up there, it becomes harder for him to really pay it off. So, if I get to some of him on this 4-game slate, I think that's fine. But I'd rather look to, cheaper guys like Bogdanovic or to more productive guys like Turner.
All right. I am just looking here. I wanted to check here. I believe he is a free agent. If I'm reading this correctly, I'll double check on Hoops Hype. But it's got projected salary 0 going forward after this year. He is making just shy of $14 million. So that's really neither here nor there, but it is something to keep an eye on. He, again, will get a couple extra shots without Oladipo. I agree with you, ex-Cossack. Who in their right mind would want to play Thaddeus Young? However, 8 teams in the player pool makes for strange bedfellows here. Moving on here to the Memphis side. Again, we have Marc Gasol and Mike Conley on the back-to-back. Both are on the trading block. Gasol's been a little bit dinged up. He is at 7,700, which is a very appealing price point. Bit of a dud in his last game. He played just 26 minutes last night against San Antonio, against the Sacramento in a loss. The Memphis Grizzlies have lost, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, their last 8 games, and they're 1-14 in their last 15 games. I think he's going to be looking to move on to greener pastures if possible. I know he's very active there in the Memphis community, but I think he's going to be traded, Adam, if they can find a partner. What do you got with regards to Marc Gasol and Mike Conley? Then we'll talk about the youngsters.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously just keep an eye on Gasol, on news on him. He only played 26 minutes last night, so I assume he'll be good to go today. But since he has been dealing with those injuries, certainly worth keeping an eye on. It is the first game of the night, so shouldn't have any, after-lock surprises. But, I think that he's a reasonable play. He's not my favorite. Like, I'd rather get to Miles Turner for less money than Gasol. Gasol probably plays around 34 minutes if this game's competitive. He's not been as great lately. We've seen the assist percentage go up, which is nice. He's been averaging about a fantasy point per minute. It's not an overly appealing spot against this quality Indiana defense. So, whatever Gasol I get, I'm fine with. But I think that there's going to be much better center options, especially because there's value at the position on this slate as well. So certainly not a priority for me. Mike Conley at 7,100. I think there's absolutely upside at that price point. We've seen about a 27% usage rate from him since the start of December. He should play 36 minutes if the game's competitive. I think that he's a pretty strong play, even though the matchup is not great. There's a pretty good chance that I have more Conley than Gasol between the two of them. But my favorite guy in tournaments from Memphis is going to be Jaren Jackson, just because he's down to a $4,800 price tag on DraftKings. And we know the minutes are all over the place, but it has a lot more to do with his fouls than with anything else. So I don't hold that against him. It just means that his ownership's down, his price is down, and you should just be aware of the risk that's there. But he's a very productive player when he gets the minutes, and if he can stay out of foul trouble, then there's no reason to think he doesn't get the minutes.
All right, moving on to the remainder of the squad here. It looks like Triple J is the only other intriguing guy that's popping for me as I move along. An interesting thing here on Yahoo, Tyreke Evans is coming in as our, I did a crunch of 100 lineups using our projections, 25% randomness, and Tyreke Evans is coming in at 63%. Now, he is the flat minimum $10 on Yahoo. That is probably the only place I would entertain playing him. Let's see, Tyreke is coming in. He's coming in at 40% on FanDuel at 5,100, and then on DraftKings, he is coming in at 33%. Now, I don't have that, or I've got it capped at 70 right now. Nobody hit that ownership cap. We've got the field at 10% on Tyreke. I suspect we're going to see that tick up just a little bit, but as we get into some of our games here, you're going to find we have a lot of cheap guys. They're priced this way for a reason, but over on Philly. So if you're looking for some counter moves, particularly on Yahoo, I think Tyreke Evans is okay there. Looking at the remainder here of, getting down here to Memphis, we've got Justin Holiday, reasonably priced, 4,400. Your mileage may vary. He has been all over the place. It is a back-to-back. He should be getting minutes with the various guys who are out. Garrett Temple is questionable with that sore left shoulder. He's 3,800. If Temple is out, I'm okay looking to Shelvin Mack as an extreme punt option, but that's more of a dart throw. I think I'd rather risk one of the cheap Philly guys than go with Mack. Is there anything else for the Grizzlies?
If Temple's out, I think you could actually see a bunch of minutes for Omri Caspi. We've really seen Bickerstaff limiting Shelvin Mack as far as just not really wanting to use him all that much. So I think that Mack would see an uptick if Temple's out. No real question about that. But I think that it could be a game where we see Caspi pick up more minutes at the 3 with Justin Holiday moving up a position. So either of those guys, if you're max entering tournaments, would be guys that you can have some exposure to.
All right, let's maneuver on here to our next game. We have the Golden State Warriors at the Boston Celtics. If you remember, good God, I think it was, 3 seasons ago when Golden State was on their tear and approaching the all-time, or on pace to set the all-time wins record. And they had that spirited game in Boston. My, how things have changed. We've got Kevin Durant now. Kyrie Irving is in here for Boston. Irving should play. He was dealing with the flu, so he missed the last game. And then Al Horford was held out for rest in the last game, so he should be back as well. Nothing to worry about here from the Golden State side, except, wait a minute, how many minutes do we think DeMarcus Cousins is going to play, Adam? He is up to 6,200 on DraftKings. That is getting a little bit dicey. I don't think he has much more than a 30 to 35 point ceiling. That's not going to do it for me at 6,200. What are your thoughts on DMC? Who, by the way, fun as hell to watch. I forgot how much we missed him.
Yeah, I mean, I love the guy as a basketball player, and I'm really, hoping that he's able to get back to where he was. As far as DFS goes, it's the same thing that we've been saying, because his price tag keeps rising as his minutes go up. He played 24 minutes last game. I'll give him 26 today if I don't see anything else, just because he had said that the plan was to, keep ramping him up a couple of minutes at a time, basically. But the issue is just that it just becomes a math issue. People want to roster DeMarcus Cousins, so you see plenty of ownership on him. But if you break it down to a points per minute basis and how many minutes he's going to play, the baseline that I think is the most reasonable to use is the sample size that we got from him with the Pelicans last year, where he played about 750 minutes with Anthony Davis and Drew Holiday on the floor. He averaged 1.36 fantasy points per minute as a fully healthy DeMarcus Cousins playing with those guys. It's hard to project him for more than that playing with more superstars in Golden State coming back from injury. If anything, you would project them less. But even if we just take that 1.36 fantasy points per minute and you take it by 26 minutes, you're still talking about what 34, off the top of my head, like 33, 34 fantasy points. So obviously, guys on a game-to-game basis can exceed their average production, but as long as he's going to get ownership at this price tag, it just means that it's really tough to get there because he has to have just an absolutely exceptional game on a per minute basis to really justify the price tag right now.
All right. Looking at things here, we do have over the last 30 days for our pace, the Golden State Warriors are playing at the 7th fastest, and we have Boston who's playing at the 19th fastest. When it comes to defensive rating here, I had a good chuckle, Adam. Over the last 30 days, the Washington Wizards, of all teams, have the 4th best defense. Interesting. They're behind only the Jazz and the Bucks. Neither here nor there, but that was not the team I was expecting to see here. Golden State is ranked 10th worst on defensive rating, 110 points per 100 possessions, but Boston is relatively solid. They are the 5th best. Looking to Steph Curry, who we know gets his shots off anytime he wants and has just been living around the top of the key for the three-point efforts. Here's a fun narrative. Waiting for the All-Star game, he and his brother are going to be taking part in the three-point contest. But you've got Steph, you've got Kevin Durant, you've got what should be a fun game here, but I don't really know what I want to do. I believe I will be setting some rules that will tell Cruncher to not play more than one of the Golden State Warriors for me tonight. Now, projections and salary cap will probably take care of that itself, but I really don't think that more than one of them is going to over-exceed their numbers. What do you like here from the rest of the Dubs?
Not a ton, because so for one, it's obviously a tough matchup against Boston, but even throwing that out, because you do get attractive price points on guys like Durant and Curry. The issue is that not only does DeMarcus Cousins take some touches, take some usage away from Durant and Curry, but also Cousins' return has coincided with Steve Kerr changing his rotation and playing Durant and Curry alongside each other for essentially 100% of their minutes. That obviously takes away production from both of them, and they both used to thrive having their minutes staggered. From a fantasy standpoint, it's obviously worked really well for the team. But from a fantasy standpoint, you would see Steph Curry averaging like 1.5 fantasy points per minute during his time without Durant, and the same for Durant. When they play alongside each other, you see, over the last month, you have about you have Curry averaging about 1.45 fantasy points per minute, shooting really, really well. You have Durant down at 24.6% usage. For the entire season, Curry has averaged 1.35 fantasy points per minute with Durant on the floor. Durant's averaged 1.24 with Curry. So you have to keep that in mind when you're, just looking at the price tag and saying, wow, these prices are too cheap for Kevin Durant or for Steph Curry. They're basically in the least productive situation they can possibly be in right now because of the return of DeMarcus Cousins combined with the change in rotation. So clearly either of them still can have a really big game. It's just that there's reason to be less excited about them than normal. Klay Thompson taking a bit of a hit as well, not as much, because with that change in rotation, you see him getting time with the second unit without either one of Curry or Durant, which was making him a phenomenal play for a stretch because he was just getting all the usage in the world during that 30% of his minutes. But now you have DeMarcus Cousins out there during that stretch as well. So taking the ball out of Klay's hands a little bit in that regard, but still a more favorable rotation for him because of the lack of Curry and Durant for some of his minutes. So not really excited about anyone from Golden State, but I think that Klay at 5,900 would probably be my favorite guy. I think that the price tag is at least cheap enough where he has plenty of upside. And then 6,300 on Draymond. Obviously it's Draymond. He can go out there and give you a 12, 10, triple-double, at any point.
All right. Good call out there for... Oops, that's not good. Interesting. All right. If we go dark, we may have to start this puppy again. Let's it's got a weird setting. So anyway, but back to this. Klay Thompson is the one guy who is popping up somewhat here on the crunch for DraftKings. He's at 24%. Curry's at 26%. DeMarcus at 31%. Ran a 150. Those guys are all checking in right around 5.1 points per thousand, which is sort of the break point of where guys start to fall out a little bit. This is a different, smaller slate, so you get down to about 48. 4.8, 4.9 before people start dropping. But Kyrie Irving and Al Horford are intriguing. Irving, 9,300, but he is somewhat of a contrarian option tonight when we look at Ben Simmons and others. And then we have a $5,700 Al Horford. That's an intriguing price point. Again, he was held out for rest in anticipation of this game. Do you like those guys or maybe a Marcus Morris? Those are the only three that are popping for me on the Celtics.
Yeah, I like Kyrie and Horford quite a bit. Horford was playing well prior to being held out for rest. He's obviously well rested now after a couple of days off. But he was getting up over 30 minutes in competitive games prior to that rest day. And he's been very productive. Over the last month, he's averaged 1.06 DraftKings points per minute. He's contributing across the board as far as scoring, rebounds, and assists go. I think that he is a very strong option, especially with power forward eligibility on DraftKings. Over his last 4 games, he played 34 minutes against Toronto, 31 against Memphis, 28 against the Hawks, and then 32 against Miami. So I see no reason not to think that he can get to at least 32 minutes in this game and be a pretty productive option. And then you mentioned it with Kyrie, the appeal of him in tournaments, because Ben Simmons, who obviously we'll talk about next game, is clearly a top play on this slate, but it's not really a secret. And you have Kyrie at a similar price point, who he's not going to project as well as Simmons, but you should see around. You can probably see 36 minutes from Kyrie here. Over the last month, he's averaging 1.36 DraftKings points per minute, nearly a 30% usage rate. It's still a very strong play, just not as optimal as Simmons. But if you're going to get a significant ownership discount on Kyrie, then it makes him appealing in tournaments.
All right. Anything else from this game, or shall we move on to the intriguing one?
No, I mean that's pretty much it. Like, it's a 4-game slate, so if you end up with some Marcus Morris or Jaylen Brown for cheap, then or Marcus Smart even, then I think that's fine. But the priorities for me would be Al Horford, and then Kyrie as a tournament guy.
Okay, we've got Philadelphia. The news there is Joel Embiid is being held out for rest purposes. He's been dealing with a sore back. They're calling it rest, but it's probably related to that, so he is not going to be in. We also know that Wilson Chandler is out with a hamstring issue. No revenge from him. Furkan Korkmaz is the guy that is popping in most of our models. He is near the minimum price. We're projecting him for around 25 fantasy points, which is sort of in the range of outcomes that he had last time he had some solid playing time and secure minutes. Talk to me here about Furkan, and then where do you rank Ben Simmons on today's slate?
Yes, I'm still not that confident in Korkmaz's minutes, because we can see TJ McConnell pick up a lot of minutes. We can see obviously Corey Brewer is going to pick up minutes. I expect Jonah Bolden to pick up minutes. So I'm still not really confident in projecting a bunch of minutes for a guy who has essentially been phased out of the rotation and replaced by Corey Brewer. I think he plays today, but I'm not sure that I'm giving him like 26 minutes or anything like that, like I'm seeing projected on some sites. I just don't really have confidence to do that, because we've seen in the past when Chandler's out that Ben Simmons picks up time at the 4, and TJ McConnell can get some more runs. So I'm still kind of digging into that, and I'll talk about it more in the deep dive article that I post later. But I'm hesitant to really give Korkmaz a ton of minutes here. I think that I would rather play McConnell as a value guy. I'd rather play Jonah Bolden as a value guy than get to Korkmaz.
All right. Corey Brewer, another discount guy who is familiar with Denver, of course. He's going to be checking in at 3,800 on DraftKings. You've got Mike Muscala at 4,200. We'll have to see who draws the start here, as Adam mentioned, depending on what they do with Ben Simmons. There's a variety of ways the 76ers can go. And then I guess the number 2 scoring option tonight is going to be JJ Redick, 5,600. Ceiling never really there, but 30, 35 fantasy points definitely in the mix here. Anybody else here for the Sixers?
Yeah, I mean, you can go to really anyone from this team, because they're short on 3 starters. 2 of them are super high usage guys. So They're all, obviously really appealing plays. I'm pulling up their numbers now to try and get Ben Simmons without Embiid, or to get all these guys without Embiid and Butler on the floor this season. You're going to have tons of usage, but also plenty of assist opportunities to go around. Simmons has played 274 minutes without either one of Butler or Embiid. 26.5% usage rate, 43% assist percentage, 14.5% rebounding percentage. Obviously does everything as we would expect. You have JJ Redick in only 166 minutes, but a 29% usage rate for Redick, averaging slightly over a fantasy point per minute. So, I mean, that's obviously very appealing as well. Should probably play around 34 minutes here. I think that it's not a surprise, but this team is in a situation where you can very easily be playing, 2 to 4 guys from this team in lineups tonight, and possibly more in cash.
All right, we are going to have some fun here in what I'm going to do now, Adam, is I am going to take this moment. We're going to stay up and running. Somehow we ended up on the, quote, free account here for Zoom, so it's going to crap out in 3 minutes. So what I'm going to do is close this meeting. You guys should be able to see my pretty face, and I'm going to have Adam rejoin a new meeting here, which should allow us to continue to broadcast. So, Adam, are you ready for me to send you a new link? I love doing this live.
Yeah, let's go.
All right, let me get that to you right now. And I'm assuming you guys can still hear me. So let me utilize this time to mention, go ahead and use the promo code DFS strategy here to get 50% off any Osmo product for the 1 month package. That is 50% off your first month. So we will definitely, that will be something that we want to get you guys in on. So DFS strategy in the promo code box, and you'll be all set. And that will help us in many ways. Much like it's what? That works out to about a cup of coffee per day. And you need to help poor Adam and poor EMAC get some additional technologies. So by using promo code DFS strategy, you can improve your viewing experience. Okay, Adam, I think that worked. Chat will, of course, let me know if that didn't. So there we are. You got to see a little bit behind the paywall. This is Adam and EMAC's version of duct tape and baling wire. But I think we would be better off with duct tape and baling wire, Adam, because you and I are a little more crafty, this whole technology thing. Darn you, Josh. Why did you have to take a day off?
Yeah, definitely Josh's fault.
Always. Okay, well, seamlessly, that will get us over here to Denver. We have Jokic back. Fantastic matchup here because there's no Joel Embiid. He should be well rested. Talk to me here about Jokic. Is he going to be one of your primary plays? Because I have been able with the scrubs on DraftKings, courtesy of the 76ers, to get Jokic, Nurkic, and Simmons in on my lineups. Now, the rest of it's pretty ugly, but I do like those 3 key players there. Talk to me about Jokic.
Yeah, I don't see any reason not to like Jokic here. Obviously, didn't play last night because he was suspended. It's not like he's dealing with any sort of injury or anything like that. No reason to think he doesn't get back to his normal, 34-minute role here against the Sixers. And he's going to be going against a front court of Mike Muscala, Amir Johnson, Jonah Bolden, primarily the first 2. So there's nothing to dislike from a matchup standpoint. He's obviously just been an absolute monster this season, averaging 1.45 DraftKings points per minute, a 38.5% assist percentage for the season. He's basically a point guard playing center, and it's just a great spot for him. He's a phenomenal player. I have no reason not to like Jokic. Obviously, haven't begun building lineups yet, but I would be very, very surprised and uncomfortable if he's not one of my core plays tonight.
All right. Branching out from there, we do have Denver on a back-to-back. We know that Will Barton his minutes have been working up. Same thing with Gary Harris. In this one, I don't know that I really like either of those guys. I suspect they will end up in my lineups, or at least Barton probably will be over there on Yahoo, where he is proportionally cheaper. DraftKings, he's all the way up to 6,500. Paul Millsap at 5,000. Now there's something I don't mind. Millsap had one hell of a game in the ass whooping last night that the Nuggets laid on the Suns, and Millsap just rolled in a little over 20 minutes. So he should be relatively fresh for this one. He'd be the guy I would look to. I think we can pass on Plumlee. I think we can pass on Lyles. Denver is just shy of being double-digit home favorites, but as we have seen time and time again, it all depends on when that game gets run away with to be predicting blowouts. Adam, what are your secondary plays on Denver? Let's first assume Jamal Murray is healthy tonight. Or let's assume him for 28 to 32 minutes of worth of healthy, which is about his normal run.
Right, yeah. I mean, assuming Murray's in, it's not really an appealing team outside of Jokic because you just have a ton of bodies right now that we're still trying to see exactly how Mike Malone's going to work the rotation. The fact that it's a back-to-back doesn't make that any easier to figure out when you're dealing with, Barton and Harris coming off of injuries recently. Millsap at 5K, I still think that's too cheap of a price tag. The minutes lately are really not appealing, but you have to put them in the context. He played 22 minutes last night in a blowout. He played 18 minutes against Utah in a competitive game. I don't know why he played 18 in that game. But other than that, 23 minutes in a blowout against Cleveland, 25 in a blowout against Chicago, 21 in a blowout against the Warriors. Competitive game against Portland, 27 minutes. Competitive game against Phoenix, 32 minutes. So I still think that you can see 26 to 28 minutes from Millsap if this game's competitive. The price tag is low enough that there's some excess value there. The one thing to keep in mind is that you don't want to take anything away from last night's production because he's just a different player without Jokic. He's averaged like 1.25 fantasy points per minute without Jokic since last season. So I'm not reading anything into last night. It's more of just Paul Millsap. If I'm going to get 26 minutes of him potentially at a 5K price tag, then there's some appeal there.
All right. Just looking at some of the ownership from this game on Yahoo, Jonah Bolden is at the flat minimum there for Philly. He's getting up to 63%. That's the, I think, fourth highest owned player. I ran 100 lineups here to get a good breakdown. Ben Simmons is coming in at 61% on Yahoo. They will definitely be in my plans. Will Barton, his price ticked up $3. He is now at 16. He's coming in at 40% on Yahoo. And then Furkan Korkmaz is the flat minimum. Again, we're projecting him for around 20 fantasy points. If we look over here on the old dueling fans, we have Korkmaz hit the ownership cap. He is 3,500 shooting guard eligible, and he maxed out at 70. Got Ben Simmons. He is point guard over there on FanDuel. He is coming in at 65%. We've got the field at 56% with the early ownership projections. And then Jonah Bolden at 3,800 power forward. I don't know that I want to earmark a power forward spot to him, but that's why we look at the projections and let the optimizer from Fantasy Cruncher take our biases out. We have Bolden projected at 21% on FanDuel, and he is coming in at 56% of my crunches. Finishing this up with DraftKings, we've got, let's see, that filter set up. Korkmaz is at 65%. The field, we only have him at 1% right now. That's going to change. I think there might have been a lookup error in my VLOOKUPs. But we've got Bolden at 5%. I've got him in the crunch at 46%. So as the ownership updates there for Philly, I suspect we're going to see those guys getting much higher in the percentages. Probably my guess would be that ballparking at 25% for those guys in the field on DraftKings because of the 8 teams in the player pool. Any other thoughts here from the Philly and Denver game, Adam?
No, just don't be afraid to load up on Philly guys. Maybe use some rules to limit how many, maybe to limit your combinations of the punts, so you don't cap upside too much by having Corey Brewer and Muscala, and Bolden together or something like that, just off the top of my head. But, I think that just loading up on Philly in a variety of different ways is certainly not contrarian, but still the way to go on this slate.
All right, let's finish her off here. We do have the final game. Let me get over to those filters. We've got Atlanta at Portland here. Now, this one is going to be, I don't know, interesting. This is one of those where there's, at some point, there's going to be a nice discussion, perhaps over the All-Star break, of our opposing takes from the various contributors here at Osimo with regards to blowouts. Now, I think we all kind of agree they're in the back of your mind. And while Adam and Laffy are on one side of this, and I kind of lean with what they're doing, they're not letting it drive their ultimate behavior on what's going on. Because again, who knows when the exact blowout's going to happen? It could happen early. It could, you could get your starters running into the fourth quarter before they pull away. So odd things happen in basketball, and we never know when that is. And we've also seen plenty of times weird shit happen, like the Washington Wizards going in to Oklahoma City and beating the shit out of the Thunder. Okay, did anybody see that coming? No, because they were double-digit underdogs. Weird stuff happens. So predicting it on a day-by-day basis is tough. That said, this is our second most lopsided game. It's Portland by double digits. They are 10.5-point favorites. 228 over under here. We have Atlanta making their little West Coast swing. Adam, let's focus on Atlanta first here. We, of course, have the youngster, Trae Young, at 6,400 here on DraftKings. We've got Taurean Prince getting some minutes, and they are increasing. He is at 5,000. Dwayne Dedmon, 5,100. Those guys, I think, are going to be the ones that sort of we can circulate in if you don't go triple high-end guys. If you go two of the high-end guys on DraftKings, you can start working these guys in if you want to go away from some of the Philly value here. Talk to me about the backcourt for the Atlanta Hawks.
Atlanta as a team terrifies me just because they're playing so many guys. It has nothing to do with the blowout, but just saying like how many guys are in this rotation, it's really scary. Like Jeremy Lin had been picking up more minutes alongside Trae Young, which was really good to see, and it was making Lin a very attractive value play. Last game he played 21 and a half minutes. He didn't play much at all alongside Trae Young, and we saw a rotation that had 11 bodies in it. So we just kind of saw them switch back to what they had been doing earlier in the year, and that makes it really unappealing. You still obviously can have some exposure to Lin and hope that he plays, a few extra minutes, and you get a low-owned Jeremy Lin at $4,200, but you can't really do that with any confidence. Trae Young clearly has upside, but again, with this team getting healthier, you run the risk of him potentially losing minutes. I'll have him projected for about 32 minutes here. I think that he's a reasonable play, but not a priority for me. And that's really the case for this entire team. I think that Taurean Prince's price tag is still cheap enough. There's some value there. He played 28 minutes last game. You could see him get up to 30 or a little bit more here. But it's not a priority, especially with all the value coming out of Philly. Really the same for Dedmon. I mean, he probably plays 26 to 28 minutes, but he is still, dealing with Alex Len playing minutes. Last game you saw Dedmon play 24.8. You saw Len play 22 and a half. It's really anyone's guess how it goes. So, whatever Dedmon I get, I think is fine, but I don't anticipate him or really anyone from Atlanta being a priority for me.
All right, and that's sort of where I am. They're just fitting in nicely as. That contrarian is a bit much. I don't know how many people are absolutely contrarian without being incredibly foolish on a 4-game slate, but they seem like differentiation plays is the word we're going to look at for here before we get on to Portland. I see a couple questions here in chat asking us here, do we watch the games or do we just look at data? Adam and I tend to watch a fair amount of the games. I do have League Pass, so I bounce around a lot. And do we look at data? Well, in a previous life, I was a CPA. I was a financial analyst, and I've spent 25 years of my career doing analytics. So, yeah, I can look at the data. Adam, I believe you were, before you were a law school dropout, were you not an econ major?
Yeah, economics major.
So there we go. You've got you'll notice a lot of people that are in the prognostication business do have some sort of mathematical or analytical background. So that definitely does help a lot. And you do want to have a nice combination of the two. I know a lot of guys get in heavy without watching the games, and they read a lot of stuff, they read a lot of recaps, and then they focus on the numbers. Your mileage may vary. I like to see, for basketball in particular, I think it's helpful to just kind of see what's going on, the old eye test, especially with the players that are dinged up. You can see what coaches do for certain defenses. If you're looking at rotations, you can get a better feel for the situation. What was the momentum if something odd happened? Now, the best place to look at rotations is to look at the linear box scores, like over at popcornmachine.net, etc., and that will tell you who was on the court at the same time when they came in, when they came out. That's really helpful for looking at it quickly. But I think watching the games for basketball in particular is quite valuable. For baseball, I like to watch pitchers and see what's going on, or if a batter may or may not be hurt. Are they favoring a foot? What are they doing with their pivot? When they're pivoting, where are they shifting their weight, etc.? Is it a shoulder? Is it a wrist? Sometimes you can check that stuff out. Football, good God, I'm a fan. I have no idea what's going on. Blocking schemes, whatevs. I don't look at the all 22. I watch Red Zone like most everybody else, but I read a ton of game recaps. Look a lot at play counts, play snaps. Types, routes run, percentage of routes. I've looked at air yards from time to time. That's not one of my favorites. But for football, it's I don't think any of us are trained enough to understand what we're actually seeing, in particular if you're going to be watching the red zone, things bounce around from game to game. So in any event, I do think, back to summarizing, basketball, absolutely, I think watching is helpful if you're looking at certain situations, but there's so much basketball every night, you truly can't see everything that you want to have. Adam, they want to know how hard the CPA exam is. Well, considering I passed that like 25 years ago, it was on paper. We had to write our essay in pencil or pen, and then we had to fill out the little dots. I had to sit for the whole exam at once. I think now you can take each section one at a time. There were 4 sections. I had to pass 3 of the 4 with 75% to make it. I took it once and I just missed all 4, Adam. The second time I took it, I got 75, 75, 75, and then an 86 on law. Apparently I studied a little too hard for that law section. But the perfect score, in my opinion, is that min-pass score. So there we are, once upon a time. All right, now that we've got Adam, giving him a little bit of a break there, let's switch over here to Portland, because I know you're geared up to talk about your buddy, your favorite, Jusuf Nurkic.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great spot for him. It's a really good player. You know, he's averaging about 1.4 fantasy points per minute over the last month. He's averaging about 1 1/3 fantasy points per minute for the season. Great matchup. It's the only thing that keeps me from saying for sure that he's a priority for me is that we have, Nikola Jokic on this slate, and I don't think it'll be tough to get there. You have Muscala as value. You have Jonah Bolden as value. So it might end up, from a roster construction standpoint, being kind of difficult to get to a mid-range center here, but out of the mid-range centers, Nurkic is my favorite. Just absolutely love him, love the spot. And people look at the minutes and tend to think that they're inconsistent, but it has much more to do with foul trouble and blowouts than anything else. In competitive games, you pretty frequently see 30 to 32 minutes from Nurkic. Played 36 against Oklahoma City in Portland's last competitive game. I don't anticipate that being the case here. He doesn't have a Steven Adams type to deal with, but I think you still see 30 to 32 minutes as long as Atlanta hangs in. And if they don't, there's really 3 guys that score for this Portland team with Nurkic, Lillard, and McCollum. So if this game does blow out, there's a really good chance Nurkic had a good game anyway. So I do really like Nurkic tonight. It's just a matter of how much I can get to from a roster construction standpoint.
All right. Shout out to Miles Steff, Adam. This will give you a chuckle. He got a PhD in chemistry, but he now plays DFS for a living. Overkill. Show off. Congrats on the PhD. We shall from here on call you Doctor. Looking here at the remainder of the Nuggets, Adam, is there anybody that's popping now that they're relatively healthy? And do you think we'll hear, let me rephrase that. I'm sure we'll hear that Harris and Barton are not on a minutes restriction. It is a back-to-back. They've both been out for such a long time. Do you think either one will top 25 minutes tonight?
Wait, we're on the Blazers, right?
Oh, God, I had my filters up on the wrong thing. God damn it. This is what happens when you read chat. Now I know what Laffy does. Yeah, we're on the Blazers. Nurkic used to play for Denver. I pulled up the screen, had the rest of the Denver filters. Oh! Yeah, that's why I'm old and why I'm your pal. Focusing on Denver. I do like CJ McCollum at 6,600. That's an intriguing price point, as is Damian Lillard, somewhat suppressed at 8,900 on DraftKings. Lillard has been working through a variety of maladies, but his production has been mostly solid. This is a great matchup, But the question is, can we go to either one of those guys? I'll take CJ for the discount, but what do you think it's going to take from the backcourt duo to pay off their number, and do you think they can both get there?
I don't really like the idea of having both of them together unless you're just game stacking it, which I certainly will be doing. Especially, there's a 2-game slate tonight as well. But even on the 4-game slate, I will have probably some game stacks from this game. But outside of that, I don't really want them together as standalone plays, just because it's pretty unlikely that you see, like a 60-point outburst from Damian Lillard at the same time you get a 40-pointer or 45-pointer from CJ McCollum, unless you have something going on the other side where Trae Young has 50 points or something like that. So not a huge fan of playing them together, but as standalone plays, I like them. Lillard, I think the price tag is just too cheap for this matchup. Hasn't been great lately, averaging 1.15 fantasy points per minute over the last month, a 29% usage rate, which is down a little bit compared to his season-long numbers. I think a big part of that reason is that Yusuf Nurkic is just playing out of his mind. You've seen his usage rate go up. You've seen his assist percentage go up. And I think that is cutting into Dame a little bit. But it's still just a really appealing spot for Dame. I don't see any reason to dislike him. Again, I think that you can play the ownership game between Lillard and Kyrie. They both come in behind Ben Simmons for me. But then if one of them is going to be disproportionately higher owned than the other, I think it's a pretty good spot. You could probably just flip the ownership, and that's a plus EV move in tournaments. For McCollum, I think that on FanDuel where you have to roster the 2 shooting guards, it becomes really appealing there. But even at 6,600 on DraftKings, I think it's fine.
All right, Al-Farouq Aminu, game logs haven't been that great. He had limited minutes from a blowout in his last one, played just under 16, but he is at 4,500 on DraftKings. I do like that. We know he can get some rebounds. He's going to be having a lot of guys to fight for it. His own teammate in Nurkic, along with Collins and Dedmon on the other side, but he is someone that I'm mildly interested in. The guys, I think if you want to project or script out a blowout with Portland winning handily and these guys getting extra minutes, Zach Collins and Seth Curry would be the players that you are looking for. Now, these guys are tournament plays at best, but if you wanted to go away from some of the Philly value and you think that they will be getting some extended fourth quarter minutes, that would be the way to go. The one guy I do like of the cheapies on Portland that is definitely going to be in my plans is going to be Jake Layman. Now, a lot of his points come from actual scoring. You like the half-point bonus there on DraftKings for 3-pointers. He does get some rebounding, but I'm projecting him or a realistic outcome, I should say. I think tonight is somewhere between 20 and 24 fantasy points. We're not going to get the 40 he dropped in his last game against Phoenix in Phoenix, but he has been reasonably good with 20 fantasy points or more in 4 of his last 5. How do you feel about Layman or any of the other understudies here for the Trailblazers?
Right. So not that you were, but just in general, don't look at Layman's game against Phoenix at all.
Yep.
Al-Farouq Aminu got hurt in the first half of that game. Didn't come back until the start of the third quarter. Then the game was a blowout, so Layman played basically the entire second half as well. That's why he got so many minutes. Normally, you're going to get around 20 minutes for Layman, and he's my favorite out of the cheap Portland guys just because he's blowout proof. He's really inexpensive. He is in the rotation to where I think he gets around 20 minutes. So it's okay, but I still don't plan on having much Layman at all. I'd rather just play Al-Farouq Aminu for 4,500, who his minutes look really ugly from that Portland game because he was injured and then it blew out. But in a reasonably competitive game, you should get around 30 minutes from Aminu. I think 4,500 is way too cheap of a price tag for him.
All right, a couple questions here as we're wrapping up. If you want to call up Thrive, we can talk about that. We've got this from the premium Slack chat from MPW. Says over there on Yahoo, Amir Johnson and Mike Muscala are both the minimum. Which do you prefer? It's going to be a little bit dicey there with Amir Johnson. Now, there is always a chance he could be tabbed as the starter, however unlikely as it is. But he's received a ton of DNPs, and he's only been playing extreme mop-up duty. He's played in 3 of the last 10 games. That's tough. Now, we know he's an NBA caliber frontcourt player, and they are going to need some size against Denver. To me, it feels like a bit of a stretch, particularly if we get Muscala starting. but on an 18 player pool, you may need to look for some differentiation. So not safe at all, but if you want to be a little bit different, I wouldn't hate it, particularly if we get any sort of news that he's going to be playing. We would definitely need to see Jimmy Butler out and minutes start to trickle down somewhat, but there's a chance he doesn't even come off the bench. That's the key risk. So Muscala, if you're making one lineup, if you're feeling feisty, Amir Johnson would definitely be contrarian. Adam, what do you got here for Thrive? I'm going to drop the little Thrive information.
I just wanted to go back to it was Muscala versus Amir?
Yes.
Yeah, so, I mean, I don't think there's any question Amir plays. He should be the backup center to Muscala with everyone out, but I don't really see a path to him getting a lot of minutes because if Muscala were to get in foul trouble, which would obviously be the easiest way for Amir to potentially get minutes, I think there's a better chance that you see Jonah Bolden slide to the 5, you see Korkmaz pick up more minutes, and you see, guys like McConnell and Shamet also get more minutes. I just don't think that there's really a route for Amir Johnson to play a ton here. So you would be essentially just looking for him to be very, very productive in like 16 minutes of play. So to me, it's clearly Muscala between the two of them. But then even if I were trying to, get a contrarian play that I think could get more run, I'm not sure that I'd want to go there with Amir just because I think that it's pretty unlikely that it works out to where he gets more than 16 to 18 minutes here.
Okay, good. So he should be coming off the bench, but capped upside is in there. But again, I like the way you're thinking. MPW. Let's see. We're going to do a little bit of Thrive here. I've dropped the link into the chat. It is bit.ly/Osmo. That is bit.ly/Osmo to download their app. That will take you to their site. You can get it for your Droid or your iPhone. You get a deposit bonus. You put in 10, they give you 10. You put in 100, they give you 20. You put in 200, they give you 50. That's cash available for immediate play. This is a player prop site. How their contests work is they put 20 questions up. You select any 10 that you want, and then it's binary. You pick yes, this happens, or no, it does not. If it's more likely, you get less points. If it's less likely, you get more points. Hey, just like a player prop. Adam, what do we have for some basketball player props today over there on Thrive?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can start with the first one with Tyreke Evans, who obviously one of the more popular talking points today. The over-under is 9.5 total rebounds plus assists for Tyreke Evans, 110 points for the over, 90 for the under.
That's interesting. So what was it, 9.5 rebounds plus assists?
9.5 rebounds plus assists.
So the projections I'm looking at, they are not mine, but the ones I am looking at have him for 4 rebounds and 3.5 assists. That is 7.5. I am okay taking the over on this one because the extra points are there. If you want to be conservative, take the under, but I'm good taking the over because why not?
Yeah, I would take the over because I have him very close to that 9.5, like slightly under, but with the 110 points for the over, I would take the over there as well. Next one that I think looks interesting is Kyrie Irving, over under 36.5 points plus rebounds plus assists, 100 points either way.
Definitely taking the over on that one. I think he's going to score probably 25, 30 points, and then let's call it 12 combined assists and rebounds.
Yeah, over for me as well. Rounding, I have him at a 27-5-7 line.
Okay.
All right, other side of that game, Kevin Durant, over under 7.5 rebounds, but you get 115 points for the under.
All right. Well, we do know that DeMarcus Cousins is back. How can we forget that? Going against Horford, probably a little Baines. What was it? 115 for the over?
115 for the under.
For the under. I will take the under.
Yeah, under for me as well. I actually have him projected for less than 7.5, so that makes it really, really easy.
Yep. The one I'm looking at has him at 7.2. So.
All right, Nikola Jokic, 16.5 rebounds plus assists, 110 points for the under, 90 for the over.
Well, considering what I'm looking at has him at 22 combined, I got to take the over.
Yeah, I have him in that same range. So Same for me. And then we close it out with Ben Simmons, 32.5 total points plus rebounds plus assists.
Definitely over. He can get a poor man's triple-double there, especially without Joel Embiid.
Yep, over for me as well.
All right, there we are. Good. Goodness gracious. Well, the only thing we had to fight with, Adam, was United against technology today. No battles there on the Thrive picks. Reminder, we've got Adam coming out with the deep dive article that will be out later this afternoon. It is an 8 o'clock lock this evening. We do have projections, ownership projections, and rankings for the 6 o'clock game. Those are coming courtesy of Alex Baker. You know him better as Osimo. We will be in the Slack chat. Use the promo code DFS strategy if you want to get in here and check out the ownership projection updates that will occur throughout the day a couple times, and then they will happen a couple more times in the 90 minutes leading up to lock, particularly as news breaks. It doesn't seem like we're waiting on anything crazy for news, but you can always follow us on Twitter. I am at EMACDFS. Adam is at ShipMyMoneyDFS, and of course it is Osmo_COM over there on the Twitcher machine. With that, gamers, we're going to get on out of here. Hopefully you have a fun Saturday. Good luck.